My name is Richard Gietl, and I'm honored to be with Mr. Udo Gietl for the third time to come down and visit you on this project. And we finally finished the Gary Fisher 1976 Daytona bike that ran alongside Reg Pridmore and Steve McLaughlin.
Right.
And I was very happy when we rolled the bike out of the truck and you looked at it. You had a big smile on your face. So that means a lot to me that you're happy with the bike and the way it turned out. And
it's absolutely beautiful, the way it turned out. And thank you for Donald. You know, Donald made such a tremendous effort.
Donald Krumholz, yeah.
Yes.
He did an incredible job on this bike.
Incredible. It's definitely, it's a credit to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, when we walked in and you looked at the bike, and then you looked at Donald and you whispered to me, he's good.
I couldn't believe it because, as I said to you earlier, the thing is, race bikes never looked as nice.
Yeah, I know.
So
well, when we found this bike, we saw the bike together in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And you were asked then to validate the bike.
Right.
And you went through different things to see the fingerprints that you remember from the day when you originally built it. And one of them was the well that you said was so bad because you did it. And the monoshock system and different things on the bike that, you know, you remembered, said, you know, yes, this is the third of the three bikes that you built for the 76 Superbike season. And this was in the series, this was the third place bike.
Very little time was between the AMA announcing that it has accepted the program. It needs to look like a road vehicle, which it does, but it is allowed with certain changes that you can make.
Yeah.
And I took advantage of every one of them. So
you knew all the changes very close.
I didn't miss anything in the rule book. So it was competitive, and it was a major shock to the industry.
Yeah.
You know, because this is a touring motorcycle. This is not a race bike. And yet it was fast enough, and it handled exceptional, which I give a lot of credit, I think, to the concept of the monoshock. And I think today, tell me what motorcycle doesn't have one.
Right, right. It looks like an R90S.
It looks like an R90S.
It looks like an R90S.
Yeah. Right down to the exhaust, because that was very important, because later on it wasn't that critical, because the rules changed in the following year.
Right.
But the thing is, at that time, I know magazines had some critics about this, but the thing is, it is basically stock looking.
But it's not a stock exhaust.
Yeah, stock looking.
But it's not a stock exhaust.
It's not.
There's some modifications on it.
It's a performance megaphone with a reverse cone on the inside, but on the outside it looks just like that.
Right.
The performance is like if it was made for a performance motor.
Right. And then so every weekend after the race, you and your crew developed more on the bike. You were always developing the bike.
It never stopped.
Never stopped.
Right until the last race. You know, it was continuously. And as you can see, when we went to Daytona, we basically had the original brakes on it. It was okay for Daytona, but afterwards it was inadequate. I just basically, you know, made the change, used the British Lockheed brakes, which were at that time were the standard for brakes. It was the ultimate brake system that you could have.
Right.
And the thing is that what I got, and we finished up the season with it.
So your bike that you built in 75,
mine was built in 75.
that was the test bed
for
all the components that are in here. So, so when we were talking about the project, we you know, I had mentioned to you that, you know, there's many things we can do because the bike always evolved, and we wanted to build it to the end of 76 season.
Right.
We wanted to, so that incorporated things like the diagonal struts on the frame. That incorporated some of the other changes like the brakes, because if you looked at it at Daytona, some of these things weren't on the bike.
Yeah,
right.
It was definitely closer looking to a production bike.
So, going back to this, we did this. We have the monoshock.
Got the monoshock.
We have the Coney shock. You did some additional bracing on the frame here
to aid the monoshock, to provide rigidity. Also, we added the external removable brace on the side. What we basically were building at the bottom of the motor was attached to the frame because that's where it originally was, but we needed a space, a frame. So this is actually a modern frame now with just the motor hanging on the bottom.
Right. Gotcha.
So all this came, and surprising, everything is like that nowadays. So,
I thought it was funny, the story you would say about, you were trying to find riders to ride the third bike. And I guess you asked different riders and they would say no, but
Yeah.
after the race they'd come up to you and they were upset. Like, I think Gary Nixon was one who was upset with you because he said you never told him the bike would be that fast.
well, I think they were surprised. We're looking at a basic sport touring bike.
Right.
And there's no need for it to go 145 miles an hour or more. And so it was a surprise to them. And Gary was the fast guy. There's no question. But he was also the smallest and the lightest. So that gave him. It was only like 1 or 2 miles an hour difference.
Yeah, between the three team
But
members.
it was enough.
Yeah.
Where Fisher in the heat race, the other two riders didn't even see him. He was gone.
Yeah. So moving forward,
So the first thing is, even though the BMW fork is relatively long and has a lot of travel, well, there's two things that needed to be done. We actually needed to bring it down further, and that's where I designed the upper crown and to extend the fork down using the original parts. So it's only one part that was changed on that. However, the hydraulics and the springing was changed in order to assist, because it is a motorcycle that has cylinders sticking out on the side, in order to give sufficient clearance so you can successfully have a good angle, riding angle.
and then you also incorporated a front fork brace.
And then the front brace. The front brace is obviously to keep any kind of deflection or minimize the amount of flexion. We don't want to take away all the deflection because it actually helps in turning.
Again, as you mentioned, the bike going down the track looks like a standard bike.
Right.
And even walking past this,
Right.
it looks relatively like a standard motor, and no one can see all the development you did to the engine,
Right.
which was amazing.
The aim is to have drivability. And let's remember, it is lap time, not top speed, that wins the race. And yes, the Japanese manufacturers definitely were faster, but we got around faster. So that's the success in racing.
That was the secret.
That's the secret. No, not a secret. I mean, it's a fact. Okay. So moving back, drive shaft completely stuck. There's nothing. Rear drive, where we took some material off to make them lighter. They made the skiers as low as 262
For Daytona.
for Daytona. They was only made for Daytona.
So Udo, a couple of things we noticed,
Right.
and again, these are very detailed things. But the seat cover, we had to get a new seat cover. Donald did a fantastic job of getting this thing fitted and correct. And then the instrumentation, we added a oil pressure gauge and an oil temperature gauge, as per the day. The tach.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's all correct.
And I put a fancy kill switch on for you.
Yeah, I can't get over that. I can't get over that. With the instrumentation, they're all different than production, because BMW uses a clock and a voltmeter. Very functional. But we needed more to monitor the motor, and the important thing of a motor is always, can you control temperature? So oil temperature is essential, which is on the right side, and oil pressure is on the left side. And we need to stay within parameters. For instance, let's say your motor is running at at 275 degree Fahrenheit, the crankshaft sees 300 degrees. The thing is, you don't want to burn the bearings. And so if you see 275, you can't go any further. So these two instruments are absolutely essential. Also, the tachometer, I had 4 of them, I sent a video. And one of them was for my bike and the 3 for Butland Smith's bike. And so when John purchased the bike, luckily enough, he provided the original. This is the clock from 76.
The tachometer from 76.
The tachometer. And the tachometer runs in the opposite direction of the production. And of course, the scale, it goes up to 10,000, which is far more than you would have on a street bike. Other than that, it's very simple. It doesn't demand much from the rider. It's in really good view. They all liked the way the layout was, so that was a good thing. As far as the fairing goes, we do use a steering damper, and this is a aftermarket. Instead of turning the knob to adjust it, the rider has to reach down to make the setting. And you need that because sometimes you get into turbulence on a track where a fairing like this will cause the bike to shake. And the steering damper takes care of it, and the aftermarket one, the way it's mounted, it seems to work properly and very simple.
So Udo, one thing you noticed, and again we talked about the restoration, is try to strive to make everything exactly to where we wanted the period.
Right.
And so I'm glad you picked up on it. The frame, we didn't powder coat anything, it's all paint.
Right.
Which I think is, for me, I prefer in many ways.
Well,
and as you mentioned in your BMW,
I mean the bikes back then, we painted them in the back of the shop.
Right. Right. So details like that are important. A lot of people will buy. You pick up on things like that right away. But yeah, I think you and I had a very similar philosophy when we wanted to get the bike done. So what do you think, now that you're here, this experience you've been very happy with it so far?
Well, I mean, it's a big surprise.
Good.
The enthusiasm, I think you never see that kind of response from people that come back 50 years later.
Yeah.
That's very unusual. I mean, I've been around the industry long enough. You don't see them.
Well, I know you. You and I have been friends for a while.
Yeah.
Long time. And I know you're a very understated man. You don't like to toot your own horn. But I think this is an expression for all the love, all that you've done, Udo, that you don't recognize how important you were to BMW and what you've given to them and what all of your hard work and labor. I mean, just these 3 bikes alone, brought BMW back. As far as I'm concerned, saved them in North America, as far as the interest and developed it to the level it is today for sport biking. I mean, you took these touring bikes, and won the series.
4 months.
4 months.
That's all I had.
Well, you had practice with the F750.
Well, I had 5 years.
Yeah, so you had a little practice.
So I had a good idea where to go, but these motorcycles were made in 4 months.
Yeah. So now that you've seen the end results, especially mine, I'm a little biased. I mean, obviously you built the motor, did the transmission, you did everything on this bike. Don Krumholz did a lot of the work on the bike, on the assembly and the chassis and so forth. What do you think of the end results?
It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. This motorcycle, well, it's the 3rd one involved. It gets a little bit better each time because you learn. As far as what it was 50 years ago, it's pretty close.
Good.
Very close.
Good. I'm really happy that you're happy with it. It makes me proud.
Yeah.
And just to be part of your history on the F750 and then the Superbike has been an amazing road. And Udo, it's been an amazing friendship. I can't thank you enough.
It's been a good, very rapid developing friendship. You know, usually in life it takes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's because I call you every day.
But our friendship developed in like warp speed. I guess.
Well, it's my honor and my pleasure, Udo. You're family to me. I love you very much, and working with you and being part of this is amazing. And the end result of this, like I said, looking at these bikes in the sunlight on the track, you know, you'll see them in a little bit because they're going to be taking them out. They're absolutely stunning, and you know, you should be proud. I know, like I said, you're understated on this, but you really should be proud of all the work you've done. Yeah. And now we have to move forward to the next project, Udo.
Sorry, buddy. You're good. No, you